Okay. Oh, Amy must have forgot her key card. Todd, will you open the door? Okay, Mr. Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to all of you that come out. This job is far more rewarding when the public participates, so thank you for that. Like Mr. Ruma, I have a bad cold, but I'm at the beginning of mine while he's at the end of his. I'd like to also thank Mr. Ruma for addressing some of the concerns that were expressed by this commission at the informal, in particular the fewer lots, the paths connecting to schools, and providing some accommodation for other segments of our community with the empty nester lots. When the commission members received this packet of information a week before this meeting, we receive it independently, and we each review this independently, and we don't come together to discuss it until right now. And so far this evening, I've been really struck by what I thought were probably unique thoughts on my part, and they're shared by everyone here. So this is really tremendous. That there seems to be a lot of agreement on this, which means for you that I don't have to read all 6 pages of my notes. So I'll be a little brief here. There's a lot of work that's still needed on this subdivision before it can move any further, in my opinion. I think that we need to remove the 15-acre site from the calculations for the density. The thing that probably jumped out at me the most dramatically as I was reviewing the site and looking at it was the trees, which were brought up by several other people on the commission and in the audience tonight. And I want to add a couple of thoughts to that. There's a couple of trees on the site that are tremendously large, and then there's a whole bunch of trees that are just very good-sized trees on there. And unlike the trees in an area like Wellington Reserve, which was basically scrubland and semi-forested, these trees have been nurtured and trimmed and limbed and protected and fed and watered and taken care of for 40 years. So although they may be, on paper, considered to be in good condition, that's as high of a rating as you can get on a tree survey. I think a lot of those trees, if there were such a category, would be rated as spectacular. And some of them are probably world-class specimens of those type of tree at that age because they've been so well cared for. And then there are also several trees that have been mentioned before that would probably fall into the landmark category because they are extraordinarily large trees. And the science of determining the age of a tree without cutting it down and counting the rings is imprecise for sure, but there are a number of commonly accepted guesstimates for that. And those 72-inch trees, by any measure, are at least 200 years old and could possibly be 400 years old in some cases. And to me, that means those are irreplaceable. And I think that those trees, the larger trees, and there are 2 that are 72-inch, there's 1 that's 54, several that are 48, a couple that are 40 on down the line. Those trees not only need to be not impacted by this development, but I think they should be preserved as, I don't want them in somebody's backyard where a kid's going to nail a tree for it, and put it that way. And so that's an important factor to me that I think when we talk about the things that have been preserved, streams and all that kind of thing, streams, we can reroute those with a bulldozer. That's not that big of a deal. But trees that have been there for 300 years are irreplaceable. And so I think we need to take extraordinary measures in this design of this development to protect those trees. A little more specifically, and again, I'll edit this quite a bit. Sub-area C with the homes for the empty nesters, I'm in favor of that. I don't have a problem with the lot size there. I don't have a problem with the lot coverage there, but I would like the text to reflect that those areas have to be set aside for empty nesters, and if there's a way to do that, to specify that they must have first floor masters or something like that, that needs to be addressed. In the other areas, sub-areas A and B, my concern there is that we're stepping back quite a bit from the zoning code that we have that sets the side yards. The other areas around here nearby, Belvedere, for example, I asked for this information from staff yesterday. The side yards in Belvedere are a total width of 18 feet with a minimum of 6 on each side, or on one side. That's similar to the R3 designation, but what we're asking for here is just 8 feet on each side, or just 6 feet on each side. And that is a difference of up to 8 feet between 2 houses. So I think we need to do something much closer to what the zoning code is right now so that the houses don't get too big on these lots and start to squeeze the lot sizes out. A lot of the comments that I had on this were about the development text regarding the architecture, and they are mirroring what other commissioners have said here. Meet or exceed the appearance code is far too generic. We need to go beyond that. Percentages of materials, I think Ms. Cram mentioned that in her writing, so that needs to be something we do on here. There were some things here that I like were a little bit odd. It lists copper as a trim material. I don't understand that. We have, it says PVC and urethane foam. They are essentially the same thing, and vinyl. That needs to be cleared up. Shutters, it lists shutters, notes shutters on there. I think we need to note that those need to be composite or wood, not vinyl. Roofing, we need to bump that up. And then I sent Claudia yesterday a paragraph of text for how to further define four-sided architecture. That was just my initial thought on that, but I think we can probably go a lot further with that too. I had comments on chimneys, garages, architectural diversity, and probably the big one here was plan approval, and I agree with some of the other comments I've heard that we need to do a development text and a plan review process here because this is such a special site that's at the same level as places like Tartan Ridge, which we saw that development text here twice, and it is exhaustively detailed, and having been through that process myself, I know that it's a very stringent one. And actually there are two reviews. There's one that the developer does and there's one that the city does. There are still references in this to cul-de-sacs, and as I saw in the latest design, there aren't any cul-de-sacs, so that needs to be taken out. I think that the elevations of the homes that are along Avery Road need to be enhanced somehow. And if we're going to develop that strip of land along Avery Road, I think it's an opportunity to relocate the multi-use path there to get it further away from the road. Excuse me. I'm still a little bit unhappy with the open space. At the preliminary or at the informal review, I stated that I would like to see those designed more as positive space and less as leftover space in people's backyards. And I think we can go further with that. Again, traffic. I'd be the first to admit that I'm not able to totally discern what all the traffic stuff, all the numbers mean. Amy, if she were here, is an expert at that. But what jumped out at me is that even according to the chart given to us in the text, or in the planning report, even with the Highland Croy connection, the traffic on Firenze is projected to almost double. The traffic on Summerhouse Lane is projected to be quadrupled. And on one of the other streets is doubled. And I think that's a result of just the layout of the streets in this area. That there's enough twists and turns in this that in some cases it's easier to leave the development to get out and not go straight out to Highland Croy or not go straight out to Avery Road. So I think a somewhat more direct arrangement of the streets in here might reduce some of the traffic load on other streets. But either way, I think there's a lot of impact on other neighborhoods that could be avoided if this were laid out differently. Kind of in conclusion here, I think Ms. Saleh said it even better than I'm going to here, but I think the community plan and community sentiment are the paramount importance when we make decisions here. This body here is kind of the representative of the public in that regard. We don't always follow the community plan directly, but when we do, the bar's pretty high, and it's pretty high here, and I think this is a long way to go before I'm willing to go against the recommendations that others have made before us on the community plan. Thank you.
Very good. I will share some of my concerns, some of the concerns of my commissioners. I went through and highlighted. It looks like the floodplain in this area is at 927 feet. I went through and highlighted all of the contour below 927 feet. Some lots in their entirety are in the floodplain, and so certainly we have to address that. I would agree that the 15 acres for the school site needs to be removed from the open spaces. There are 968 trees on this site, and Claudia, could you put up some of my tree pictures, please? There, I believe, are 56 trees that I think are worthy of designing around. They certainly predicated the golf course. Craig, the professional out there, was kind enough to escort me around so I could find some of these trees on site. And I just wanted to take some pictures of them and see, you know, the sheer size of the trees relative, and their condition is excellent. And the tagging of them with the landmark tree tags, I think, really speak to someone. So if you're not aware of the landmark tree program in the city, approximately 28 years ago, the Kiwanis Club undertook an endeavor to grid our entire city off, and they used it as a fundraiser. So every Brownie troop and Girl Scout troop and Boy Scout troop and all of the folks that serve our community so wonderfully took a grid, and they took responsibility for it. Gene Johnson was the kind of the mastermind behind the whole thing, and he's gone now. But so they took these, and what they did was these kids went and tramped through our community, and they tagged every tree that was greater than 24 inches. We didn't get every tree because the Brownie troops and those people were doing it. But what we did get was we got a lot of terrific information, and it was really, in my mind, one of the best community events that have happened in Dublin, because it really drove a stake in the ground and said, this is who we are. And at this point in time, we have a snapshot, an inventory of what we have. So there are 19 landmark trees on this piece of property. Like I said, I believe that there are at least 56 trees to design around. Claudia, can you put up the other image I sent to you? This is me, very high tech, so this is my highlighter. And basically, I put the trees that were worth designing around on these represent the 56 trees that likely existed long before the golf course did. Some of them might be upwards of 300 years old. And I think what it does is it starts to show us some hot spots of areas to design around. Now, could we develop this piece of property and save every one of them? Probably not. But as it stands, we have saved 11 of them in our current plan, or 25%, which is not nearly enough in my estimation. And then there's additional 3 inside footpaths. I realize footpaths are pretty easy to relocate at this point in time. But I think for conservation design, the bar needs to be much higher in terms of the trees that we're committed to saving. I had the great privilege this late summer in August. I was a monitor for one of the foursomes at the tryouts for the Dublin Jerome girls golf team. And it was on a hot August day. And I walked this course and I watched 4 unbelievably talented high school golfers play a round of golf here. And I walked from tree to tree and I stood in its shade with my 9-year-old. And we stood in the shade of each tree, and we could walk through the entire golf course and stand under the shade of a tree at each hole. And it was a really great afternoon for my 9-year-old and I. It was a lot of fun, and it really spoke to me about the condition of this property and the condition of these trees. I'm a self-proclaimed tree hugger. My degree is in horticulture, so I know a little bit about trees, and it really leads me to appreciate these more. I have some concerns about the traffic engineering. You put up a slide there that said that 7% of the 10,000 trips, it would be an increase of 7% to the existing 10,000 trips, which equals 700 trips, and 240 homes would be 2.91 trips per home. And as I understand it, a trip leaving your home is 1 trip, and when you come home is another. So we really need to maybe look at some of, and I don't disagree with the guiding principles of the engineering study as how they might work in other neighborhoods, but when we have a neighborhood that almost all of the traffic is going to head to the south and to the west, we might need to change our modeling a little bit, because I don't know that it captures the fact that cars aren't going everywhere. They're all going to the same place. So I think that we need to look at that. When we look at Muirfield, I don't know, you asked us this evening to cut out the piece of the pie in sub-area D, and in Muirfield, you wanted to cut out all of the pieces of the pie that reduced the density. We can't do that. We have to take the pie as a whole when we're looking at our adjoining neighborhoods, because they are whole developments, and it contributes to the feel or the experience of a neighborhood. Sub-area D, I don't believe, can be calculated in this, because although your offer is very generous of transferring it to the city or to the school maybe for $1, at the end of the day, there'll be a school there, and that's no longer open space. So I don't know how, I don't feel like we can calculate that in there. Let's see, what else do I have? I think that concludes my comments, and what I want to do here for a few minutes is, we have been together for more than 3 hours now, not that I'm counting. You've heard a lot of things from the neighbors, you've heard a lot of things from us. We have some decisions to make. There were 11 conditions in the staff report. I think we've heard some very high hurdles this evening, but it is our practice to always leave up to the applicant if they would like to pursue a vote this evening, or if they would like to maybe take advantage of some time that they might have to fine-tune their plans to some concerns that they've heard raised this evening. So I guess I would like to invite you forward and hear your thoughts.
Again, we do appreciate all the time that everybody spends, both you up there and the neighbors. I think, given the difference of opinion between some of the commission members here, the staff report, and our reading of the staff report, I think the only thing to do is ask this be tabled.
Okay.
And let us see what we can do to respond to the additional issues that have been raised.
We're certainly happy to do that. So we will take a motion and vote on that. Then you would also would like to table the preliminary plat as well. I just want his lips. You'd like to table you're requesting a tabling for the preliminary plat as well?
Yeah.
Don't know how many fingers you have, but, okay. Very good. That being said, is there a motion on the floor with respect to case number 14-068, rezoning preliminary development plan?
Make a motion to table?
And a second? Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Newell?
Yes.
Ms. Saleh? Yes. Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Very good. And the second will be case number 14-068, preliminary plat. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to table.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Saleh? Yes. Ms. Newell?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Very good. Well, I thank you all for coming this evening. And thank you, Mr. Ruma, for all the work that you've done, and we'll look forward to you participating with staff in the days and months ahead. Okay, if you could please make your way out to the lobby there. We have a few more things to do. Okay, if you could please take it to the hallway. We've got a few things left on our agenda that we need to complete here this evening. You want to adjourn? Okay, legal is telling me we can adjourn. Thank you. Pretty easy.
Except for the kids that are small. She just said, they said this.